Welcome to the Drum Show, where every week we try and explain, or we do explain, how marketing is changing the world. The world is changing marketing. And I have to say, it's been a pretty intense little news period we've gone through. Big story this week was Netflix announcing that it's going to take advertising. We saw Elon Musk buying Twitter. Wow. And we have seen the launch of a new TV channel in the UK, which is Talk TV. And we're going to talk about all of those things and more over the next 30 minutes. And one of the other big topics we're going to talk to you about is the Drum Awards, because last week we had the Drum Awards for Digital, and that sort of does fit into this overall agenda. And to talk about all this stuff, I'm joined by an amazing panel. We've got Marek Rubble from Aircards. So
hello.
Welcome. You're also a columnist for The Drum.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
You're right about the
Happy
future
to be
of technology.
Here. Yes, all over it.
Lynn Lester, Managing Director of our awards and our events. A busy little period you're going through at the moment. Obviously, you had the awards last week, and we've got 2 this week as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like you're making me work for my money, Gordon.
And Hannah Bowler, who is a journalist with The Drum, who's been writing about lots of the stuff we're going to talk about.
Yeah, it's been an erratic week for me,
It has been.
I'm busy.
But I think it's fair to say that on one hand, all those stories I've mentioned seem quite disparate, but I do think there's a common thread running through them all. And I suppose actually I was cycling to work yesterday, I was passing a billboard and they had a Talk TV poster up. And right afterwards, they had a GB News poster up. And what that struck to me is actually GB News and Talk TV basically have the same strategy. They obviously believe that there's huge swathes of the UK population their views aren't being reflected by the current media choice. So obviously they're slightly, I think it's fair to say, slightly right of centre, but they're sort of feeding into this demand. And then obviously with Twitter, Elon Musk's, his big sort of idea is he wants to make it an open forum. He wants to bring it back as a town square and open up to a bigger variety of comment. And then also we have had the Netflix story. It lost 2 million subscribers, and some critics believe that that's because they have a very sort of wokish sort of philosophy or feel about the content at the moment. So what do you think? Are we actually living through a bit of a woke backlash at the moment?
You know, there's this famous quote, isn't there? Censorship is when a man thinks he knows more than you ought to know. So, you know, and I think we need to be careful of censorship, you know, in terms of freedom of speech, but also in terms of what you can and can't say. Yeah, I think there is a bit of a backlash, I have to say. I think people are a little bit sick of being too scared to say what they really think. But within the constraints of the law, I have to say. So Elon Musk is not, I don't think he's advocating that we're going to start breaking the law, you know, but it's allowing people to say what they kind of want to say.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But I think there is this. I've read article. Of course, there's so much content about the Twitter takeover. But there's like now where's the balance? And I think it's like where's the balance between the free speech and the hate speech? Like as you even mentioned, it's like where's the kind of the law? Who will be moderating it? And it's like I think there's a lot of kind of now from a, let's call it progressive or more left or whatever we call it kind of side that's kind of okay, a guy that is really kind of free speech absolutist almost will be in charge of the kind of the biggest, one of the kind of most important public forums that we have in the world. So it's like, and will he be making these decisions? Where is the kind of like the balance between the hate speech and the free speech? I just don't know. But I do agree that it's like people, I think it's like some kind of like some parts of society are tired of just kind of thinking a lot what to say.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Working out where that balance is between hate speech, because obviously we noticed that Stop Funding Hate has had a big campaign against GB News. In fact, you know, every time someone advertises in GB News, they're basically contacted through social media by Stop Funding Hate, and the objective of actually to get them to pull their advertising. Yeah. Does that strike you as, is that healthy, do you think?
I personally think it's quite healthy to do. I think there's obviously checks and balances that need to go in place when there is free speech. And sometimes I think, there are healthy groups out there that are monitoring these things. And the monitoring process that Stop Funding Hate goes through is constant. It's an interesting campaign. They have a lot of quite vigorous daily. Like everything that gets said on GB News goes through this monitoring process, and they're kind of one of the only kind of groups that are doing this. Obviously, Ofcom are monitoring all the time complaints, but this is quite, I think, a good and robust system to kind of keep.
But in fairness to GB News, I mean, they are Ofcom regulated. They've haven't had a complaint upheld against them. Do you not think there's a danger in terms of free speech? Because obviously, stop funding hate effectively want to shut the station down. I don't know what their view is on Talk TV. Have to be a bit more relaxed about that.
Yeah, there's definitely been with Talk TV a bit more of, I think there is a bit more of a separation between Talk TV and GB News in terms of people thinking that they might be a bit more professional and their views might be a little bit more not progressive, but on a scale of being less kind of shouty and a lot less kind of that kind of angle. So I think there is definitely a separation between the two in terms of from the advertising sector. I think media buyers have been a lot more kind of, let's just wait and see how this one plays out. Whereas with GB News, I mean, the reaction was before it even hit air. So I think this one with Talk TV, everyone's been a bit more cautious. They're going to see how it happens. I think the kind of standing of News UK, I think, is kind of holding them in a lot better stead than GB News.
Yeah, but and also it is a more professional-looking product. I think the launch has been quite good, hasn't it, in terms of... Although
it has actually, so it launched with 300,000 views on launch day. That has actually slipped to, it lost, Piers Morgan's show lost 100,000 in just a day. So, I mean, we're back down to 200,000 for his show. So, I mean, it's got a big job to kind of sustain its audience, really.
Because obviously he kicked off with Trump. And where's going to go after that? But then
But that Trump, that's the one that dropped the views. So, I mean, the second part of Trump already shaved 100,000. So,
yeah, fascinating.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah. What's the feedback are you getting from the industry about Twitter?
It's such a mixed bag because I think every advertisers are extremely nervous. But there has been a few people and much of the industry that are kind of intrigued. I think it's fair to say. I don't know if anyone else would agree. I think there's like a lot of trepidation, but also a bit of like, oh, this could mix things up. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, no, I agree completely because on one side there is of course, brand safety is a massive subject for most of the advertisers, and I think it's like Twitter kind of going in this more, as we talk, like open space and just like when people will be able to discuss much more than in theory they can now. I think this makes kind of brands a little bit kind of like anxious, but at the same time, there are talks that it's like with the kind of like without the Wall Street breathing at the back of Twitter, they will be able to set the agenda that's like they will be followed. Even there are talks about making Twitter a bit more premium environment, talk about subscription. That I think could open, like kind of will change the ad model. I'm pretty sure the ad model will be changing for Twitter, but it can open new opportunities. And if hopefully the process will be measured and kind of in some control, not Wild West, it can open really interesting opportunities for advertisers. So I'm personally a little bit like, oh wow, this is big. But I think from a brand perspective, it's like, I think it will be similar to what we talk about Talk TV, that it will be kind of wait and see, kind of like, let's see what will happen. People, I think, learn that it's like the knee-jerk reactions are never good in the marketing world. But I also understand some of the brands that what this will mean for brand safety. What does it mean for us being able to align with the values that we put out to the community? There are definitely two parts to this story, and it is intriguing, and it could be potentially interesting from a...
It's going to be fascinating.
It's going to be many, but definitely fascinating.
Yeah. I think we will actually be revisiting this next week when the dust settles, because I think you're right. I think it's actually, as our model starts, an alternative model emerges for it, that's going to be really interesting. But obviously, talking of alternative models, Netflix taking advertising is fascinating as well, isn't it? I mean, that's going to be quite transformational for the advertising industry. Suddenly, this whole ecosystem has been opened up to the brands. In fairness, they are already using it. There's a lot of product placement on Netflix.
Yeah, that's the thing. Netflix has different revenue models anyway. So it has product placement. It also does branded content a bit. It also kind of has merchandising, partnerships, and all of these other different things. So it's not fully reliant on subscription model anyway. But yeah, I mean, advertisers have been wanting this for a decade. And I'm sure there'll be kind of like banging at the door of Netflix, trying to see what kind of first-party data they can get their hands on. It's quite a pivot, though. I mean, like, for the last 10 years, Reed Hastings has been so hard on this line of never introducing ads. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it opens up. I mean, I'm pretty sure that it won't be kind of interrupted ads. I feel like it will be integrated a lot more sophisticatedly than...
Yeah. Well, on that sort of point, you know, what are the options and what sort of advertising they might use? John McCarthy, the John's media editor, caught up with Tal Shalzin of Innovid to ask him that very question.
The future of television, in my mind, would just be ad-supported, almost like history repeating, where dual revenue stream, subscription and advertising, was the way of the past. And as a test by what happened just in the last couple of weeks by Disney Plus, hints from Netflix, and obviously HBO Max and the combination of HBO and Discovery, who's going to increase ads over there as well, further cement the idea that dual revenue stream is the way of the future.
I wonder if you can talk me through some of the ways in which Netflix could embrace advertising, maybe in a way that would sort of benefit from its huge amount of data that it already has on its many millions of users.
They will not take a profile-based targeting and more of a behavioral-based targeting approach of segmenting, to use an overloaded term, cohort viewers into groups and say that they know some data about type of content, binge watching behavior, location, things like that, which may indicate age, affinity, or things like that, and then use that in order to use for targeting. My bet is that at least in the near future, we will not have any advanced actual email-based targeting. The beginning of advertising on Netflix would follow what they already do. So if you think about it, there's actually already ads in the form of product placement in a lot of Netflix production. My take is that they will just take that product placement and supersize it to some type of a bumper ahead of a show that says this show was brought to you with limited commercial interruption by a sponsor. So taking product placement and convert it into sponsorships and doing that. And I think just in terms of the visual appeal, we will probably see, again, just my personal take, is it will take time until we will see mid-rolls or something that interrupt you middle of the show. And we will see a lot more similar to old HBO type ads where you see ads only before content, which predominantly promote other content.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely is a very exciting thing for that industry. This is really, I mean, I don't know about the consumer, but for the advertising industry, this has got to be good news, isn't it?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, like we mentioned already, and it's like it was mentioned in the interview, I think data is just something that advertisers are really, really excited about. But I also agree that it will happen gradually. It won't. I think Netflix has a history of really a lot of testing when it comes to the UX. I think they are really proud of it, and they should be, because I think it's like what they've done from a recommendation engine, from how the UX and the platform works. They did amazing job, and I think they will be really careful to introduce ads to it. So I agree with everything that was mentioned in the interview, that I think it will start from growing from existing models and just kind of making them a bit more interactive, making them, for example, adding the kind of just a message from a sponsor and so on. And I don't think we won't see kind of like a VOD approach from Netflix, I think, for at least some time.
I mean, the other thing as well, Netflix is an experience-first model, so they have to protect that like treasure gold, and I think I don't see it being an easy entry point. I think it would be quite exclusive because they have to protect what goes on their channels and how they do it, and it'll be highly engaging. I think Tal, wise man, wise words, he's absolutely right. It'll be about that sort of high premium contextual targeting. So I just think we have to sort of bear that in mind. They're an Oscar-winning streaming platform, so they're going to protect this. Or else people will just walk away. There's plenty of choice out there.
Not having ads is the basis of what built Netflix in the first place. So it's kind of like that is what it became known as. So it's like,
well, it has to be part of your experience.
Yeah,
it can't just be something that plops up on your screen. It has to, something like Bridgerton. I'm sure there'll be sort of contextual stuff that's related to that's really in the style, and it's like, oh my God, this completely adds to my sort of viewership. So I sort of see that kind of approach initially, and then who knows what will happen. But I think it'd be crazy if they didn't take care, which I'm sure they will.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that, well, on one hand, a big bugbear of the industry, advertising industry, was that they didn't get access to these streaming services. Suddenly, that's now opened up, so it could be quite transformational.
Especially, and the same with Disney. I think that when that launched, advertisers were quite sad, I think, that they couldn't get in there when they've obviously got big, long-standing relationships with Disney on their linear channels and through different ways like that. So when Disney made their announcement, I think everyone was quite excited to finally kind of get in some of their inventory, which was there previously anyway, so...
It's quite nice to open the shop and there's a big queue already.
But I suppose, to your point, that because it's an experience, whoever's on that platform is going to have to work hard in engaging the audience, giving them relevant information, but also high-quality information.
Absolutely.
Because I do think, actually, over the last few years, the digital industry has maybe putting the tech before the creativity.
Yeah.
So a lot of the work hasn't been that great. I came into this industry because I love TV commercials.
Yeah.
They're inspirational. That was part of the experience.
Yeah.
But I actually think the standard has probably dropped, or has been dropped in recent times. Don't you agree?
I do agree. I think over the last couple of years, which we'll talk about in a minute, I think the standards have risen in so many different ways, which I won't sort of steal the show. We can talk about that in a second. But I do think, Netflix will be very much policing the content that goes out. It won't be a case of create it and we'll run it. I think it will be very much going through the sort of verification process, and it will have to meet certain standards to even get through in the first place.
Yeah, but that's actually a really good segue, because what I was going to go on to say is that, until recently, I think the standards were maybe a bit flat. I think it's actually more the volume of work as well. Maybe they diluted the good stuff, in fairness. But me and Lynn presented the Digital Advertising Awards last week, and one thing I think we both noticed was the standard of creative work. So everyone's talking about the CMO and the CTO, the ecosystems are really emerging.
Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant example of where you can actually see that happening in reality. And really, to give you a sort of an indication of what we're talking about, I thought we could maybe show two of our favourite pieces of work. One was the Grand Prix winner, which was done by an agency, I think it was in Canada.
Yeah.
Called Rethink, and it was for a charity, a musicians' charity, where they identified there was real mental health issues amongst musicians, which explains why a lot of the amazing names tend to die when they're 27, like Jimi Hendrix, Amy Winehouse. So what they did was they used AI to recreate their music to try and draw attention to this issue. I think we can show you the work now.
Some sad news in music.
Amy Winehouse found dead. She was just 27.
Hun, one of the 5 members of K-pop group,
Said to be a suicide.
overdose of a popular thing.
The Jimi Hendrix experience is over.
The music industry has a mental health problem, and it's not just ignored, it's romanticized by our obsession with tortured artists like the 27 Club, a group of legendary musicians, all lost to mental health struggles like depression, anxiety, and addiction at just 27 years old. Begging the question, if they'd gotten help, what would they have created? Over the Bridge, an organization providing the music industry with mental health support, presents Lost Tapes of the 27 Club, using AI to create the album Lost to music's mental health crisis. Using artificial intelligence, we analyze the audio data from iconic 27 Club members to identify specific patterns in their riffs, rhythms, melodies, and lyrics, which we then use to produce entirely original music that could have existed had they gotten the mental health support they needed.
I got nothing to say.
We launched the album on all major music streaming platforms, where it immediately struck a chord with our audience and reached 2 million streams in just 1 week. All of a sudden, music's mental health crisis was being discussed on a global stage, including as a trending story in music's most iconic publication and on the world's most listened to podcasts.
That's amazing.
That could pass.
But there you go. Fuck yeah, it could pass. That's good.
But most importantly, musicians began reaching out for help, ensuring their music lives on, because even AI can never replace the real thing.
Well, there you go. I mean, amazing piece of work. And actually, I think you actually caught up during the show. The creative director, Sean O'Connor, or one of the creative directors, zoomed in. I think you interviewed him.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And I think we can maybe see that footage now.
Hello. Do you know it was such a beautiful piece of work, and I know that, you know, you had an 800% increase in the people that reached out, you know, the musicians that reached out for that kind of support. I mean, how that must have made you think, you know, we made this work and it was so successful. I mean, how did that make you feel?
I mean, that was awesome. The client's fantastic, and they're doing, you know, such amazing work. And to see that they were sort of overwhelmed with requests of not just musicians, but family members of musicians reaching out to them and saying, like, how can I donate money? How can I get involved? How can I get, you know, my friends and family and musicians I know involved in your programs? It was, yeah, that was just the icing on the cake. You know, the attention's great, but if it doesn't lead to all those great results, it's kind of all for naught.
Great, and you know, fantastic indeed.
Yeah.
But what do you think of the work generally, Lynn?
I mean, just to sort of pick up in this piece of work, and I think we're sort of seeing it through a lot of the pieces, is it's storytelling at its best. And I think when the advertiser or the client or whoever's trying to sort of create the activation, when they can sort of go deep into the narrative and they can really evoke emotion. And I think the last 2 years of anything has been a reset. And it's a bit weird because advertisers are saying it's like, people are people, we're all humans. It's like, yeah, you don't say, we've kind of known that forever, but we've not really behaved like that. Yeah. So I sort of see that coming through, the very human nature, the storytelling, you know, drawing people in just so many emotive ways. I just thought it was beautiful, it was crafted well. And I think the big thing is about people really, and it sort of, I guess it's the drums raison d'etre, it's all about solving problems. So it's like, actually, how can we genuinely help people? And I guess it's using the technology and the creative thinking and the thought process for good as well. And I mean, there's tons of more examples that I could go into, but you know, I just sort of seen a real shift in terms of the thinking and actually using, as I say, using the data for good and using the technology. Like, I sort of get the sense that people are now dipping their toe into this metaverse Web3 world, and it's just really clever and it's really brave as well.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, that it's like, we talk about the activity that was all like using artificial intelligence, which I think, especially creative agents, industries, maybe like media, just always been like, oh, we have to be careful about it. This is really automatic, robotic. But actually what you said, it's like, it's storytelling. You can use this kind of really automatic, robotic tool to actually say something that really matters, that really touches people in like their soul, their kind of problems. Actually drives results. So I love it that it's like, because it's like, it is like technology is a tool. So it's like, we shouldn't be almost like afraid of it, of thinking about the artificial, about data. It's like, if it helps you tell a human story, this is what it's there to do. Like, I love that IBM, I think a few years, they were talking about that we should stop talking about artificial intelligence, but talk about augmented intelligence, that it's actually there to augment what we're doing. It's there to help us to, and especially in creative industries, to help us to tell better stories. So yeah, I absolutely, yeah, no, this, it was amazing activity.
There's another great piece as well about, you know, when I sort of say the point about the data for good. So it was a community campaign where they basically used data in a good way, and it was Tower Hamlets, and it was the sort of Bangladeshi community, and they sort of identified that many of them weren't leading maybe the most healthiest of lifestyles. So they used that data to do something good and to sort of target them about how they can improve their lives and live longer and all this sort of stuff. So I just think it's really nice. I think the sentiment is lovely, because a lot of brands, as we sort of talked about the woke stuff, can get it badly wrong if it's not authentic. So actually using the data to inform your proper thinking and process makes all the difference.
Yeah, but this was a beautiful use of AI, which is great. It's interesting to see how AI is going to be used more in campaigns. The other sort of trend I quite like is where people sort of set out to try and bring the sort of physical and the digital world together. 100%. And it was a really great example of that, where Doctor Who won a campaign for their Flux series, and we can maybe show you that as well.
In 2021, the Doctor returned for Doctor Who Flux. A 6-hour mystery where a cosmic event changes history. Our idea was to create an innovative and disruptive 360 campaign where the Flux disturbance infiltrated the real world. We created an ambitious online and real-world treasure hunt as the Doctor's universe began to merge with our own. It started when fans spotted a hidden message in the teaser trailer, which led to a secret website and message.
I'm not sure where you've gone.
The 13 clues were hidden across space and time, including a 19th century oil painting on display in Liverpool. Each clue led to the next before the password unlocked exclusive trailers and a message from Jodie Whittaker.
Thank you so much for getting involved in the mystery to #FindTheDoctor.
For next to no budget, we achieved 6 weeks of press attention, smuggled marketing materials into some of the biggest tourist attractions in the UK, trended on 5 separate occasions, and energised and intrigued a passionate fan base for the season to come. But this was only the beginning. In the series, the world plunges into blackout before an alien invasion. So we did what no entertainment brand had done before, by simultaneously deleting our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and YouTube accounts, as well as the official website. After 24 hours of trending in the UK and internationally, they returned with a bang. New artwork, a new trailer.
The best trailer ever for Doctor Who.
And a brand new look across all platforms.
So, another really great example. Lynn, what do you think the other, obviously, they're bringing the sort of physical and the digital realm together. Is that sort of thing you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we also run the Experience Awards as well, so we're seeing lots of campaigns like this, and it's putting people first.
What was your favourite Experience Award nominee?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. I don't know, let me come back to you. I don't have a favourite. It's like all the shows are all my babies. So I don't kind of have a favourite one yet. There are a few things I love. I love the Tough Turban. I don't know if it's necessarily one of the Experience. It's not an Experience one, but I just love that campaign.
Yeah.
That campaign I loved because it was basically the Sikh community. It wasn't cool to sort of wear a turban and not have your turban, wear a helmet and not have the turban on, and it was either style or your culture over, sort of safety. And so what they done is they created the Tough Turban, so it sort of hardened up on impact. So I know that's not the experience that you were maybe looking for, but I just love that.
That was last week as well, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
But one of my favourites was the telecoms company did the pizza.
The 5G that
campaign.
was a really good one, yeah.
Did you see it? So what they did was they had a restaurant, I think in London, restaurant in Edinburgh, and they used holograms.
Yeah.
So somebody in Edinburgh could have a pizza with their family in London.
Yeah.
There's a hologram on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
And again, another great use of technology.
The one I did really like was actually Netflix. It was the one where it was, the movie, sorry, I didn't really like the movie, but it was a zombie movie. But what they'd basically done is they created this aeroplane. So it was like, as if this aeroplane was real. And they got all these influencers with lots of following in to watch the premiere. But what they didn't know is they were about to scare the bejesus out of them. So they watched the zombie movie and they were like, yeah, this is cool. And the whole sort of premise is when influencers get scared, they post on social. So literally, I think there was more hype about it than because I watched the movie before I even knew about this campaign, and I was a bit disappointed, I have to say. But had I seen this first, I'd be like, oh my God, and it probably would have hyped it up in my head somewhat. So yeah, I really liked that as well.
The ad's better than the main feature. It should be.
Yeah. Sometimes it happens.
So what sort of things what do you think are the biggest trends in terms of the CMO and the CTO, their sort of realms come together?
Oh, and this, I think it's been going on for a while, I think. And it makes, for me, it makes total sense because it's like technology, whether we think in a kind of like a role of CMO in a more kind of like a media-focused way, and of course that's like, and then kind of like in a bigger way when we think about 4Ps and just kind of like marketing. In both cases, technology completely changes how they can do their job. When we think about media, it's like there was a really good quote from he was CEO of oh my God, I don't remember, but one of the gaming companies. Sorry, and he was saying that it's like basically media is all about technology, business model, and content, and it all starts with technology that it forms business content, business model, and then that informs content. Like even when we talk about Netflix, kind of like, or cable TV, then it's like it was all premium because we were able to charge for it, and broadcast TV because it's like you cannot really control who watches it. It has to be kind of good for everyone. But it's like that's why from a media perspective, when you think about technology, especially now when we think about the metaverse, the M word, and just kind of all the immersive and the kind of like cross-platform activities, it's like it will change completely how CMOs will be able to connect with their audiences. But then on the kind of like in a higher, this kind of bigger level, when we think about how they deliver the business models of their businesses, of the goods, products, services that they offer, technology like touches on each point of it. When we even think like logistics, that's a really big kind of like question round about like this one day, if you don't get something in one day, you just basically like somebody offended your family, like the brand didn't deliver. So, but this technology touches all of it. And I think it's like we'll be seeing basically these two roles interact with each other more and more. Maybe not merging completely, I would say, because I think there is a kind of like the power in the specialism and different skills and so on, but working really closely together.
Yeah, and we obviously see that at the awards. I mean, this week, Lynn, what have you got on?
So tonight we have the Search Awards on, which is, it's quite a technical show, so there's not necessarily tons of sort of front-facing creative to see, but the sort of thought process and the strategy and all that, so it's going to be really, really brilliant. It's in our everyday search, so it's a pretty important show with a lot of $1 billion in that market. And then tomorrow we're doing the Online Media Awards, which is all around the sort of best sort of journalism and content coming across the world. So it'll be very emotional actually. There's a lot of real hard-hitting stories. It does sort of, it pulls on our heartstrings, doesn't it?
It's sort of proper stories that people actually put their lives in danger in order to get the news.
Yeah, and that's where freedom of speech is like case in point.
Yeah, and Hannah, you've got a starring role in both, don't you? You're our roving reporter.
I am the roving reporter, so I'll get some tissues out apparently for the Subfest.
I'll provide them
for the Subfest tomorrow.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think that's all we've got time for. So thanks once again to my amazing panel.
Thank you.
Obviously, a lot of awards action, and we have amazing case studies. So if you actually do want to see the case studies from the Digital Advertising Awards, you can sort of look for a little QR code which is going to pop up at the end of the show. But in the meantime, I thought it would be quite good to leave you to the strains of that amazing new track from Amy Winehouse. Thanks for watching.
Well, I got no idea. I got nothing to say. It's all wrong. And I like to get on going. Trouble is showing with this song. I have seen it all, but it doesn't show one bit. My mind never rests, except for when he says I'm going back on to the living. My man, I know it. My man, I know. With a woman's heart and this man on my mind. Couldn't open my eyes, but that's just fine. Me and my brain full, with no chance to get old. Now it's over. Need some closure. I have seen